Thanks for joining us today at Innovative Solutions and Technology. I am Matt Hiddle. I'm with Ohio EPA and am a regular user of one of the programs presented on here today. So for those people that are involved with tracking data and metrics relating to recycling goals, which is what I do at Ohio EPA with our state planning of solid waste and recycling. This should be very informative to you. So I will also say I'm a board member for the Association of Ohio Recyclers, the NRC affiliate. So I'm involved in that capacity as well. But let me just go right into the presentations. I'll turn it first over to Chris Ronson, who is with Retrack Connect. He's a senior manager there and has been for 13 years. If they ever automate Retrack and add a voice to it, I think it would be Chris's voice, because I consider him the voice of Retrack. He's always presenting on Retrack related topics. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Matt. I really would choose someone else's voice, but I don't know if many of us like the sound of our own voice, but you're going to have to hear me for the next 15 minutes. So without further ado, welcome everyone. I really appreciate you being here. And again, really appreciate the NRC and everything that you've done to put on such a great event. Even though it is virtual, it's so good to see many of the faces here that I know, and so glad to meet all of you here. Angelica, I believe you have a poll that we're going to kick this whole thing off with, just to get a sense of who's in the room. So we're going to give that a shot. So feel free to answer as honestly as possible. But if you really want to be a hauler or an institution today, I suppose you can do that. Okay, so far it's looking like, I don't know if everyone can see this. Can they see the results? Says we can. No. Okay. Oh, they're saying no. Well,
we can see them, host.
Yeah, I should be able to show the results at the end.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll give you folks another 10 seconds.
I'd also invite people to use the chat feature for any questions you have during the session, as well as if you just want to put your name and what organization you're with. We'll be able to get a better feel for who's here.
All right, so very heavily government agency focused, which is helpful, because that's what I'm going to talk about initially in working with many of you. So I am going to jump into my presentation here, share my screen. Okay, well, if you have seen one of my presentations before, I usually like to start off with a quick story here. This is my son. He's about 1.5 years at this point, and starting to pick up words. And we go on quite a few walks throughout the summer to enjoy as much of the nice warm weather. And one of the things that he's been noticing when we're walking is he'll say "bidge," and "bidge" is garbage, and he's pointing out the garbage that's on the path. Thankfully, there's not tons of it, but I just found it so fascinating that he recognizes that there's something in the environment that is not supposed to be there, and is saying this is misplaced. This isn't supposed to be in this spot. And so I think what we're doing here has been ingrained since such a young age, and that it is really important to continue to do what you're doing in your roles, and really appreciate what you folks are doing every day. I also noted that the word recycling has many more syllables than garbage. So maybe if we use a different word, that might help the 1.5-year-olds. But that is my intro here. I'm going to cover a bit about Retrack for those of you that don't know who we are, And then I'm going to jump right into 3 challenges that we have found with data collection programs, and hopefully go through some of the recommendations that I have based on all the years that we've been working with government agencies. And then just a quick reminder about Party Track at the end. So what is ReTrack for those of you that don't know? ReTrack is the software that streamlines and elevates your waste and recycling data collection programs. We've been doing this for over 20 years. We're trusted by over 60,000 organizations that are collecting, managing, and analyzing recycling solid waste data. In a nutshell, it is very straightforward, the ReTrack Connect service, and it's intended to be that way. Reporting entities create accounts, and then they join your program that you're collecting data for in the platform. They complete the form or forms that you've made available to them, whether mandatory or voluntary. And then at the end of the day, you're able to aggregate everything up as program managers. So Matt, one of our super users, as we call him, has been doing this for many, many years in ReTrack, collecting data from all sorts of types of reporting entities across the state of Ohio. Their team verifies the data and then uses the best practice analytical reports in our software to review that data and share it with other stakeholders and make decisions based on that data. We work with folks like Matt at the Ohio EPA. I believe there's 19 different government agencies that are using ReTrack Connect now. We also work with counties, solid waste authorities, municipal agencies, and other organizations as well, some private sector folks and institutions. Anyone basically trying to collect and manage better data, we want to help you and we want to work with you to streamline that process. We say that we try to eliminate spreadsheets as much as possible. This is going to help you reduce errors, save time spent on the data entry yourselves, and then centralize the information. I'd mentioned the best practice analytical reports, being able to look at those and trust that they are pulling the data together correctly. And then you can have our team to rely on to help you with that. The types of solutions that we've been working with and that are going to inform some of these recommendations that I have coming up are hauler reporting, facility reporting, recycling ordinances, local government reporting, and then some grant application management that is actually peppered in or attached to some of these other types of reporting programs, which is a fascinating element that we've seen work really well. So the first challenge, quality versus quantity. Oftentimes, government agencies are looking to collect a lot of information, whether it's from haulers, facilities, local governments, and we know they have the best intentions. Leave no stone unturned, answer as many possible questions about their diversion programs. But what we found is that there's an equal amount of time needs to be spent on ensuring that the data that you're collecting is reputable and error-free. You can have 1,000 data points, but if you can't trust the data that you've collected, you're not going to have confidence to make those decisions. Similarly, you need to have a data verification process in place. If the data is coming in and nobody's looking at it, or they don't have a good way of looking at it, or it's not clear or transparent, that's where problems can start arising. I have said apples and oranges. I've said apples and pretzels. It really depends on what the quality of the data is, but you really want to be comparing apples to apples when it comes to data collection. And so there's some things that you need to put in place to ensure that you are comparing like versus like. And then the other challenge is this data entry fatigue, and it does connect with that more data concept. And ultimately what we found is that some folks look at a super long data request and it just becomes too overwhelming, and then you're not getting any data versus the information that you truly need. So some recommendations around this. More data versus better data. You want to be laser focused on the outcomes. What are you going to do with that data that you collect? With the data verification process, you want to be documenting that workflow. With the municipal measurement program that we run with the Recycling Partnership, we've established a data verification protocol that we've shared with all parties, and everyone's very clear on the timelines and then also who's responsible for what. That makes it very clear to understand when data moves from one stage to the next and when you can start trusting the analytical reports. To avoid comparing apples and oranges, you want to start by looking what others are doing. You're going to find that you can use best practices and not reinvent the wheel, and that's going to get you to the point of trusting the outcomes that are coming from that information. We want to pick data points and commit. What we have really advised against is, even though it's not a perfect, maybe questionnaire or perfect data points that you have collected, no one can ever know exactly if the metrics are perfect or you need to adjust them over time, but stick with them for a couple of years, because when it comes to trend analysis, it's really difficult to look at that information year over year if you've been modifying things along the way. And then finally, if you understand that there's going to be a data gap with the data that you're collecting, put that up front. So with the municipal measurement program, we understood that some government agencies don't have perfect data, and we wanted to know whether the data that they were reporting were estimates of tonnage versus actuals. And giving someone the ability to make that note and give that context can be extremely powerful when you're looking at the data and understanding what to include in your reports or what footnotes to make sure. And finally, trying to use technology to streamline the data entry fatigue that can occur when you are kind of asking for this information. So a couple of things that we found work well is volume to weight conversions, not asking people to do these calculations themselves if they have a volume and they need to convert that to tons, have the technology to do that for them, and that way you're going to get consistent numbers. And then pre-populate information from year to year that you know should be staying the same or similar, and then that's going to just eliminate that extra step of filling out stuff that folks assume that you should already know. Second challenge is what I call the silver bullet fallacy. We've all done it. You get excited about the next shiny piece of technology. Maybe it's a new project management tool with Gantt charts that are going to change cascading priorities when a deadline is missed. Or maybe it's an expense tracker that automatically files your department's expense receipts. Wouldn't that be a dream? Technology can be a powerful tool to streamline data collection and analysis, but without the key stakeholders' commitment to implement the changes necessary and the systems in place to ensure adherence to those protocols, you're going to have that new shiny piece of technology sitting around collecting digital dust, as we call it. So let's work through some of these challenges. And the first one being just that buy-in that you need. What we have found that some folks are starting to do with 3-Track Connect programs is including their reporting entities in the scoping exercises. So if you're starting a brand new data collection program within your county or within your state, really getting a stakeholder group together of the folks that are going to report to you. The folks in Portland Metro did this. They have 55 haulers reporting to them on a monthly basis and into the software. And before they started that, they got some large hauling companies, smaller ones, and said, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to transition to this data collection platform, but we want to know what's the best way for you to report the data. What information do you have, and how do we mesh that with what we're needing? Focusing on those outcomes and insights that you're going to gain, not just collecting data for the sake of collecting data is extremely important as well, and just making sure that everyone is understanding why you're doing it. Are you going to adjust education outreach materials for specific regions that have lower diversion rates? Are you going to focus more resources on contamination control activities for areas that see high contamination rates? Being able to communicate these goals from the outset will help get your team invested in the outcomes of that overall data collection exercise. Secondly, we found that voluntary reporting programs are different beasts compared to mandatory counterparts. It's natural, everyone's busy, and a new data request is just one more thing to add to someone's busy schedule. We encourage all of our clients that have voluntary reporting programs to be creative with incentives. One area that we have seen some success in is tying the reporting program to grant applications, as I'd mentioned earlier. MassDEP has been doing this for quite some time. They've tied their annual waste and recycling survey for municipalities to their extensive community grant program. We've actually even tied that requirement together technically in ReTrack, so someone can begin filling out that application, but if they haven't filled out the solid waste and recycling survey, they kind of get hit with this error and saying, hey, you need to go and finish that up. The Recycling Partnership has also done this with the Municipal Measurement Program, and requested that those forms are filled out in conjunction with the grant applications that are to stay eligible. And then finally, it only takes a few things to get in the way of a best laid plan. So anticipate delays more likely related to getting your reporting entities up to speed about the new or upgraded data collection program you're putting in place, and ensure you've taken steps to communicate the changes well in advance of the reporting deadlines. Finally, last challenge, lack of access. So sometimes data collecting is the challenge itself. Try as you might to get that stakeholder support, those data collection efforts can fall flat. In many cases, we strongly believe that this information is actually more efficiently collected using a standardized national effort and then made available to jurisdictions that seek local insights. We know that data availability is decentralized, unstructured, and limited. Oftentimes, studies that have been done, which can be extremely valuable, can be expensive. We know that they're time consuming and they need to be refreshed regularly. When was the last time you looked at a report and it was 10 years old and you were saying, can I rely on this data? It's not current. Another challenge is these limited standards exist for government agencies to evaluate how well their programs are performing. And then making decisions, investing in infrastructure, those investments are significant, and making sure that you have the right information available can be difficult to obtain. That does bring me to one of our exciting announcements that we just made 15 minutes ago after the plenary, if you were there. So I will say it again. Over the past year, we've been working on putting together a dynamic database of standardized, high quality structured material management data in the US that government agencies initially only will be able to use to gain efficient, quick access to the data that they need. It's going to include diversion disposal program data for all 50 US states. You're going to have facility information, including MRFs, landfills, compost facilities, and more. You're going to be able to reduce that risk for program decision-making by having that data better at your fingertips. You're going to be able to compare programs using those industry standard benchmarking that we're starting to build into the analytical reports. You're going to save a ton of time on material management data collection process. And what we're seeing and what we're hoping is going to happen is it's going to supplement folks who have current data collection activities by giving them access to data that they've wanted to collect, but maybe didn't have the teeth to do so. And so it really is this brand new service that is going to open up a lot of doors of possibility when you're looking at wanting to gain instant access to data. We've initially started working with 2 data providers, the Recycling Partnership, many of you know very well, and the Waste Business Journal folks. Both of these organizations have been plugged into the industry for many years. We're so excited to be working with them to deliver this critical data to your virtual doorsteps. The report library includes 5 key reports. It has over 5 million data points. Government agencies are going to be able to select a state that they'd like to have access to as part of their subscription and be able to generate local insights within the state. You're going to be able to learn which communities are operating residential curbside and drop-off programs, and identify materials that are most commonly accepted in programs, and then gain access to instant program characteristics. And then in the recovery and disposal facility module, you're going to be able to search an interactive map to find facilities near you. You're going to be able to see profiles of each facility, and then even dig into the tipping fee trends charged by specific facility types. It is just the beginning of this reporting library, but we're excited to bring this to you folks today. We've worked with focus groups, beta testers, and we've heard that this is going to be a fantastic resource for data-driven organizations. So really encourage you to check it out. If you'd like a free preview of what is in the database, you can go to retract.com/sightline, click the Get Started link, or there's this link in the presentation that will be shared later. Introductory pricing is available now, and really we can't wait to hear you what you think about it. And then finally, just before I close, don't miss Party Track, which is coming up right after this session. Hot topic tables, which are extremely popular last year at the virtual conference. Go talk about the topic of your choice, or join us at the data and measurement table to keep this discussion going. Thank you so much, and I'll pass this over.
Thank you, Chris. Encourage again everyone to use the chat feature to put any questions you have for Chris. We'll save the questions for after the next presentation. So at this point, I would like to introduce Judy Gregory, president of Go to Zero Strategies, and also co-founder of the Smart Compliance Incorporated Technology, and Bob Hollis, who is co-founder of the Smart Compliance as well as Mobius Intelligent Systems, and Zane Harvey, who is the co-founder of the Mobius Intelligence System. So they are all, I believe, based out of Colorado, and I'll allow them to do any further introductions when they come on. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Gregory. Judy Gregory.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, hi, everybody. So, Chris, that was a really great presentation. I appreciate all the ideas that you shared about collecting data and some of the challenges, and our presentation will, I think, feed off of that a little bit and provide a little more insight. My insight will be coming more from a consultant working with various clients. So we've rounded up the whole posse, and today we're going to be talking about the smart, the bad, and the ugly of data collection. As a consultant, I've been in this industry for 35 years, and basically I've worked for solid waste haulers. I've owned my own solid waste collection company. In the last 10 years, I've been doing primarily consulting with local government, with waste haulers, with institutions. And as I'm working on projects, usually using field people to collect data, the real challenge is working within the systems that we have for managing that data, collecting that data conveniently and accurately, storing it, and ultimately utilizing it to provide information that will be of value to our clients. I think Chris hit on a lot of that. Sometimes we collect so much information, but what do we really need to know, and what's going to help us make better decisions, implement better programs and processes? And so as I've had to work oftentimes through systems that my clients have or develop spreadsheets, I've just really come to the point that it's very hard to do this in a succinct way where we are able to utilize the data and gain the benefit of it. And oftentimes I found that it's been more challenging to work with technology than helpful. And so Smart Compliance is developed by Bob, Zane, and myself, basically to address some of these issues and to really help our field people make better choices in terms of the data they're collecting, and then help us provide better decisions to our clients. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what are some of the data challenges, because realistically, I don't think we have a lot of data scientists in our audience. I think there's oftentimes many of us that are using multiple data tracking mechanisms, and we're trying to marry that data together, which can be very challenging and cause a lot of discrepancies. Very few of us actually have 24/7 real-time data. So when we need the information, it's not there. We're asked for something and we find that we have to download spreadsheets and sort and filter them versus having things at our fingertips. And the truth is that to get the data to a point where we can utilize it and find value out of it, I don't know that we have enough staff to handle all of those needs that we might have. So how do we overcome that? Because realistically, this wonderful piece of technology that we have access to isn't always as valuable to us as we'd like it to be. So we're going to talk about some of the bad and ugly ways that we're collecting data, and what are some of the more ways that we can be smart about collecting and utilizing our data. So the first thing I want to share about, and again, a lot of this really comes from the consultant perspective and having, people in the field and lots of people utilizing data. And I think Chris already hit on this one. Spreadsheets are great. Sharing files can be a great tool for us. When you have very large sets of data and you have multiple users, even the shared files that we have now through Microsoft and Google, they're great, but they don't work with large data sets. They don't work with lots of multiple users. And I can tell you from experience that, we've tried to utilize some of these shared file resources, and found out that data has been missorted, misfiltered, and then trying to backtrack and figure out where those errors took place is very challenging. So having a smart system in which you have smart access so that different users have different access and logins to only access what they need. Some of those might be field auditors who are only utilizing a field tool for data input. And then you have administrators. You might provide data to an outside agency, which only has certain access to reports. So it's very important that when you are collecting large data sets, that your users not only know how to utilize the system, but they only have access to the pieces that they need, and that you're able to track who's utilizing and making those changes in case you do find errors. Oops. Sorry about that. The next thing, and this is really a big one for us, consistent data. We can spend days, hours, weeks training staff and people on collecting data, but when you don't have a system that provides for smart decision making, we find that the data can come in all sorts of ways. So, if you've used online forms, there's lots of different options. Radio buttons and drop downs are great because for certain items you could get consistent responses. We found that when you're allowing surveys or data collection fields with open entry and notes, it's very challenging. A lot of that data is not utilized later because there's no way to really look at it from an analytical point and provide feedback. It is good for looking back on accounts and seeing who you've spoken to and maybe some of those comments you've gained when you're collecting data. But for analytical purposes, it's very challenging. So here's a perfect example. If you've got collectors in the field collecting information on are the service levels correct, and you've got open entry fields, how are you going to sort this data later? And what ends up happening is you end up spending a lot of time on the back end going through and doing that data cleanup and trying to figure out what the user meant by certain responses. So it's very important that we're collecting data and able to make it so that each user is collecting it in a similar fashion. So here's a perfect example of what I'm trying to explain. We do a lot of bin assessments where auditors go out and have to make recommendations on how much recycling service you need, how much organic service you need. And so they'll go out there and look in bins. And even though we're on a webinar, if you were in front of me and I said, how much recyclable is in this bin? Somebody might say 25%, somebody might say 50%. And somebody might say 5%, and another person say 25%. And how much recyclable is in this bin? So when you have smart decisions, what you're able to do is you're able to provide a mechanism for auditors in the field to have some baseline data that can help them make better decisions. So in this example, basically, the auditor is able to select the type of business. And this is a California city program that I'm looking at. But when they change that business type, it's going to go pull data from the state waste characterization for their specific city for that business type and pre-populate it. And that's going to give your auditor some baseline data to utilize, which then they can adjust if they talk to the business and find that there's programs in place that would warrant that change. But again, in this example as well, there's compliance issues related to participating in certain programs in California. So even as that auditor is making these changes, it's adjusting the compliance. So let me forward to that piece where you could see as they adjust the percentages, right now they're not waiver eligible under this program. But as they make decisions, it can change that waiver eligibility versus having our auditors have to have calculators and paper in the field. We find even in that case, they're oftentimes making mistakes on the decision. So anything you can do to have smart decisions and really minimize the opportunity for your auditors, not to necessarily collect wrong data, but to collect data that isn't consistent with the way other auditors are doing it, is going to save you a lot of back end. We find that we'll look at the data points from various auditors, and they're not wrong in their assessment, but they're different in their assessment. And while that may not be a challenge on a small scale, but when you're trying to make citywide or municipal-wide decisions, you want the data that you're looking at the end to be consistent regardless of who's collecting it. Another thing when we're doing a lot of outreach is providing results. It's always best to give the results to the client when you're there. Once you've left them, the chances that they're going to review those results, that they're going to follow up with you, that they're going to take an action are much less likely. So we always like to make sure that we have something, not just an outreach piece, but something that we can, it's like the nuts and bolts of what we're trying to give to them that's specific to them. You can always use handwritten paper forms, you know, those triplicates to be able to do that. It's a lot of time in the field. Once you leave, you can send something much nicer that's professional and prepared via email, but then you're no longer on site. But what if you can give those custom results while you're in the field? This is something that I'm super excited about that we just recently launched, which is a multilingual feedback where we're able to meet even with people that we can't always speak with because there might be language barriers in multiple language, print the specific results for them, and then put them on the outreach, put them on the bin, provide that instant feedback in multiple languages so that we're leaving something in the field for our clients. And so with that, we're going to talk about a few more things, but we're going to dive in right now. I'm going to pass it over to Bob, who's going to talk about a few of the other tools that the system provides that are great for that in-field experience, for instant feedback and information for our clients. So Bob, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you, Judy. And Chris, great job. It sounds like we're all trying to get everybody on the same page here. The important thing is, as Chris mentioned and Judy mentioned, and something that's spoken about in data science all the time and appropriate for here, is garbage in, garbage out. People have talked about that with data analytics for a long time. And so we're going to talk today about some of the ways that you can collect data in a way that provides real-time updates and gives you everything that you need. Judy, are you? Thank you. So a couple of ways that people have traditionally gone out and looked at what they've got in their waste streams is using route reviews or waste valuations or waste characterization studies. Some people use different terms and have different meanings, but they're all basically the same thing of analyzing what's coming into your waste stream. So the benefits of that are you can optimize your routing both for service levels and for logistics efficiency. Monitor trends and look for opportunities. So if you're starting to see something increasing in the waste stream, you can identify that source material and figure out what to do about it and start planning for future and track trends, just like they do on the marketing side for product sales. We see all the materials coming through on the post-consumer side, and need to track those same types of trends so we can plan, anticipate, and be ready for what's coming through the stream. And then right size services. So you can have either a situation where somebody has, way more bins and dumpsters than they need, or they're not using them appropriately because they're not sorting and they have contamination issues. Or you have an issue where somebody has bins out there they're not being billed for that the hauler is unaware of, or the community, whoever's handling that. And then you can assess container condition and proper labeling. And even for your haulers, if the truck drivers are out there, you could even track things if you wanted to, like, bin was inaccessible or locked behind a gate, or there was a dog that stopped us from picking up, or even take photos of a bin while you're on the haul. If it's knocked over every time you come by, you can document that sort of thing and collect that in the system. So we're going to talk about how to identify and what type of a contamination occurs most frequently and how you can collect that information. So again, we mentioned route reviews and waste sorts. They have different benefits, and they're good to be done in combination with each other ultimately, because the more information and feedback you can get, the better decision making you can have. So route reviews are good for individual generator assessment, and you'll see from our tool that we can track any route, any hauler, any day, any specific time, ease of assessment without facility or a large team, and then flexible staff scheduling. Some of the drawbacks are the visibility of materials. and doing a visual estimation. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in our future slides. And then waste sorts are good for route assessments, getting exact weights, measures, and material types. And I've even seen some people take the waste and lay it out in a pie chart representing the percentage that it encompasses in that sort. But some of the drawbacks are, again, small sample sizes. And sample size is always important for getting good data. Difficulty tying the contamination back to the generator. So you might be finding a lot of this particular material in your stream, but you don't know where it came from. And it doesn't provide any participation or service level verification. And of course, you need facility and equipment and staff and PPE because they'll be sorting through all this stuff by hand. Here's a short video on our people out in the field. This is actually down in Southern California and a live project that's going on right now, or I think actually just recently finished. And you can see we have any mobile device will work, whether it's Android, Apple, Mac, you can do it, or of course, Microsoft. So we have our person in the field, and she's collecting the data there and putting it into her survey form, which I'll show you momentarily, and then geolocating. So we're tracking precisely where this is. And this is our field app. And then you can print the label right from there that goes on the bin. And one of the things we're doing now in some cases too is we also have handout brochures with a spot for this label to go on, so they can be placed on the flyer or the brochure and handed to the business owner as opposed to a resident. This is an example here of what people would see with the field operators that are out there. This is what they would look at when they're coming into the system, and they can have specific target accounts that toggle, and they can see the status of anything in the route that's being audited. So, and then once they zoom in onto any specific marker, that gives all the information and access to that account. So we also have a desktop version, so people can do the same thing from their desktop computer or laptop from their office, of course, without the specific geolocation. But let's say you went out in the field and you were collecting this information with your mobile device, and the field map is the way to go. Once you're back at your desk, if you want to make a change or need to update some notes, you can open the same system on your desktop and use it from there. Here's a quick shot of what we collect when we're in the field. There's a lot more information than this, but just to give you an idea, and I believe this information is fictitious for that address and such, the account number, but that gives you an idea of what you collect while you're out there. And you can really gather any information that you need. So if there's a particular program, this system is all completely customizable. So if there's a particular product or material in your area that's specifically a problem or needs to be tracked, that can all be built into the system easily. Some of the results that we can get is you can see from looking at our green waste bin results, recycle bin, and trash bin. Then for those of you who don't know, a bill passed out here that requires organics to be sorted. And this is what our software was initially designed for, but it works for anybody who needs to do tracking and analysis. So here's just an example survey. So you can choose the type of business. You can see vehicle ID, route number, load number, whatever you need to record there. And then the sector of the load, commercial, multifamily, residential. And I believe Zane's going to pick it up from here. And one thing that I'll mention, when you saw our going out and filling out the survey, and they're using a mobile device, and people have asked about machine learning vision, and that is being worked on. There are people who are making advances, and that will be integrated into our system at some point too. And for those of you who may not know, Google's been doing a big project with their vehicles that are going out mapping everything. They've started using those cameras to also capture images of litter that they're making available. I'm also part of a Department of Water Resources data analytics group looking at trash. And then that vision and those training materials are going to be made available to other people who need to train models. So it's an advancing field, and definitely something we see coming down the road and into our product when it's ready to go. And with that, I'll toss it to Zane.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Bob talked about the route review tool where they actually go into individual containers, and we also call them lid flips, and then kind of inspect what's in there and do an evaluation. One of the problems with the computer vision is that we typically don't advocate the auditor dig around through the trash. And I know when I've done this presentation on route reviews elsewhere, people say in California, people dig through your trash and look and see what's in there. And that's really weird, but it's mandated in California. So it's required. And but the auditors still don't really dig around through the trash. So how can you really tell what's on the bottom and such? So again, as Judy was saying, it takes a trained auditor to gather, actual accurate information. So that was the route reviews. This is another field tool. We call these waste source or waste evaluations per the 1383 regs in California. As Bob alluded to, these tools were originally designed for compliance in California with the various laws, in particular SB 1383, but the technology is applicable anywhere, and we're applying it elsewhere. The waste evaluation Bob talked a little bit about is just another tool to get a handle on what's in your waste streams. And so you have your recycle stream or your trash stream or your organic stream. Hey, let's take a sample of that. And you typically need a facility, and we're going to actually, weigh it and then sort it and then actually see what is the distribution, like what type of materials do we really have in this? And is our recycle stream, does it really have a lot of recyclables? Does our trash stream have what it's supposed to have in it, et cetera? And this is a little bit more accurate of a way to do so. Our tools have been designed, our smart system has been designed to work well in the field, and that's been a struggle, is that the field, oftentimes something works great in the office. They go out in the field, they have poor reception, and the tool's not working, and we can imagine how frustrating that is for the auditor out there. So our tools have been really field tested and got all that feedback from the auditors that we've built in, and tried to make the tool as easy to use for them in the field. So it's a combination of UI, UX, and making sure the tool is easy to use for them and helps them. As Judy also said, a lot of these data, gathering can be auditor specific. So you have one auditor, they do the assessment, you get this result. You have another auditor, they do the assessment, you get another result. Our tool in particular, our generator manager, well, all of our tools really, try to build in all the smart logic so that it's less auditor dependent, and the tool does as much as it can for them so that they, it's less subjective on their part. So this tool, again, is going to be used to do the waste evaluations. You can see the video playing here, and this is just a recording on a mobile device. It also works, on desktop. And then this data is going to go back into the same database that your generator manager and all of the other tools use. And so the other thing we want to stress is, one database, don't have separate sets of data, one database where all your calculations are done and all your data is consistent. So you can see here, we have some advice to the auditor that the sample does not yet meet the 200-pound minimum. So they know they have to, collect more for these. For this particular one, they had to get at least 200 pounds. And then they also have to do, after their sort, they have to get within plus or minus 2 to 5% of that 200 pounds. So they know that after the sort, they still have all of that material. The materials here, this was one we're using in California, but again, we're also adjusting that based on the jurisdiction, and that could change, across the country, across wherever we're using it. And so you also have the ability to take pictures, upload pictures, or take pictures straight from your device. Obviously, on the other end, we want to apply. I'm going to talk about the analytics, but computer vision obviously always comes up, and how can we have? And there are tools out there that you can put above a bin, and it can identify items based on machine learning and the training and everything. And we're working to incorporate some of that into our tool, but again, some of it just requires a person that has to do this. So we're trying to automate as much as possible, but we are working on those types of things. You can go ahead to the next one. You can see there now we're within plus or minus 2%, and then we have kind of a table at the end of a review so they can make sure all the data is what they thought, and then they can push the survey. And so the challenge here, analyzing information. So, we have here the bad, I guess, can you go back? Using multiple files and multiple versions of files and have everybody having their own data set, that's pretty much, the worst. Basically, we want to come over here to the smart system where smart analytics provide real-time information, improve performance, and guide decisions, and help the auditors have one version of the data. Here's actual a dashboard of analytics on the actual waste evaluation data or the waste sort data. And obviously, we want to inspect the streams. We want to do filtering. We may want to export the data. And so you can see here, you're just selecting various routes, days a week. Maybe you want to find what days of weeks have an issue, what streams have an issue, what routes have an issue. And you can see down there the pie charts are adjusting. So here, these are analytics from the route review data that Bob talked about. And so an obvious issue is that everybody's collecting data, but are we really using it to improve? Are we really using it to make better decisions in the future? So we can collect it all day, but are we actually utilizing it? Is it actionable? And are we improving? And then on the other end, we can do machine learning and data science and things to try to get the value out of the data that we collect. But really, compliance, smart compliance, I mean, the reporting aspect is really what's on everybody's minds, especially in California. CalRecycle is going to be coming knocking, and they better have the right data. And they've said that obviously 1383, they are very serious, and you got to have good data. And so our system is designed so that we have to collect all the data. We give you the custom report that you need whenever your governing body comes and asks for the information, or whoever's asking for it. You just hit one button and you have the data that you need. You have the report that you need. You have the numbers and the metrics. So this is the other side, that this is California specific, what you're seeing. But these reports can be, basically customized to whatever you need. And we found every jurisdiction has different reporting requirements. So we obviously tailor that and customize that. And with that, I guess I'll give it back to Judy. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just going to wrap up here really quick. So, and I wanted to just add one thing to what Zane had mentioned, and that we've been doing waste sorts for quite a long time. And, we've heard the horror stories of after you've left the waste sort and you've cleaned up, you've gone back and you realize there was a mistake in the data. One of your outbound loads didn't get weighed, or something was weighed incorrectly. And, these are the kind of things that when you use paper and you don't have guidance for your auditors, even the best auditors can make mistakes. And to really make sure that your system is alerting them, hey, there's an error here, there's an issue here. Don't push that, that load that you just sorted back into the pile with everything else, because there's something wrong, can cost thousands and thousands of dollars and lots of issues. So really, that's where a smart system should make things more convenient, more accessible, on demand, make sure that your data is consistent, and really alleviate those problems with providing incorrect or wrong data. So whatever system it is, if you're managing large data sets, a smart system is going to be very important, and a customizable smart system, that incorporates, if it's just solid waste or if it's sustainability in general, waste, water, air, what you're managing. So with that, we will pass it back to you, Matt.
Thanks, Judy. Okay, we have a couple questions in here, and I think a lot of these related to the smart technology are specific to California and the 1383 legislation and the reviews that are required. So those that I think understand that and are involved in that have a couple specific questions related to that. And first, it would be to ask what waste characterization study you're pulling your data from. And secondly, to use of image recognition technology, which I know there's a lot of different technologies that are out there being used by haulers on their trucks. And why can that not be used to do some of these route reviews? Any one of you three can answer that question. Questions.
I'm not the visual technology expert, except for the
Yeah.
fact that I will say one thing really quick, Bob, and I'll let you jump in. We've been viewing for one of my clients. One of my clients is a large company that gets invoices, and several of their haulers are utilizing the technology on their trucks for contamination. And we're finding a lot of mistakes in the invoices for overbilling. This client's been overbilled in the thousands. So I think the technology is going to come around, but I don't know that it's there right now in the ways that we're seeing it be used. So I have a little bit of a worry with using that, especially when it comes to fining or penalizing people based on the information that's coming with it. But go ahead, Bob.
I will, and then Judy, you can come back to which characterization study. There was a second question in there. But in regards to the machine learning vision, the most important part is training a model. And so you can imagine if you have something just scanning the top layer of a bin, how different that can all look. I mentioned I'm part of the Department of Water Resources. They call it the Trash Analytics Group. And we've tried, and I've tried in other ventures to create something that would even identify specific brands. But when you have something buried in the mud or buried in the dirt, or only a corner of it sticking out, or it's discolored, or it's shredded, you can imagine all the millions of iterations that a machine learning system would have to go through to figure out what that is, even whether or not it's wet. And ideally, you'd have a type of system that did a lot more than just the top layer screen for machine learning. It would also do basically a radar shot through the bin and give you a bigger picture in 3 dimensions of what's actually in there. So it's a great technology. Zane and I especially are very early adopters and like to work with that kind of stuff even for fun. But we don't think the quality's high enough right now to be integrated into a system that could be trusted as much as the human eye. And Google is making their images that they're collecting. Even they're having trouble with all their millions of images they're collecting to get something that's pretty accurate. But they are going to be sharing all of those images for other people to use to train their machine learning models. So that'll be made available to the public at some point soon.
Thank you.
The other question was which statewide waste characterization. So I work in Southern California. So most of the stuff that I provided as examples was California based, although, realistically, this could be applied anywhere. Our project was pulling from the CalRecycle statewide waste characterization study. We utilized the most recent. And basically the process is that our municipalities, the data is pre-populated for their specific municipality by business type or business sector. So when you're, for instance, in the example that I showed, when you change from a hotel to a hospital to an office building, to a manufacturing facility, it will update and pre-populate the waste characterization data with that coming from the state. And then it allows the auditor to make adjustments. So for instance, if it says that the trash on average has 10% cardboard remaining in it, but that business has a really good recycling program that's already diverting cardboard, the auditor would be able to reduce the amount of cardboard showing in the average from the waste characterization study. And the cool thing is that as you remove that out of as you reduce that, it automatically adjusts your trash to 100%. So you're not having to play toggles up and down in that case. So.
Okay. I know we're in the last minute here, but I did want to ask one question to Chris really quick. If you can talk about your Sightline program and just talk about how the data is going to be incorporated and how it's made to be apples to apples. You're muted.
How it's going to be incorporated. So right now it's within the one platform, Retrack. So anyone with a Retrack Connect account will be able to access both services. As far as incorporating it within our clients' data sets, we're still thinking of different ways that that will be able to be possible, just because, of course, importing and pulling data into specific customer programs can be a little challenging, but I think there's going to be lots of possibilities there. Apples to apples, we have our data team ensuring that all the data that's ingested into the actual database is cleaned and standardized and put into the model of the database before it's actually then made available to our clients. We're updating on a monthly basis and then assessing those updates, so that ensuring that it is standardized, that the information is consistent, and then also providing a way for our Sightline users to flag something that they might see that might have a discrepancy. You can never be 100% perfect with this stuff. There's a lot of context that goes along with just we have 30 tons of plastic material that's diverted. That can mean a lot of different things. So just understanding the context behind some of these data points is going to be critical as well, and making sure that that's as transparent as possible and folks are generating the reports. Hopefully that answered your question. I do want to just, Judy, the on-site kind of real-time information that you folks are giving back is just super valuable. It's so good to see that that's happening, because I hear that a lot of the time. It just takes a long time to get that feedback back to folks. So very cool.
Awesome. Well, we are over time, and I just want to put another appreciation. Thank you for the presenters today, and getting this innovative solutions and technology session out to everybody, and hopefully we'll be seeing more about you guys in the future. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Matt, Chris, Angelica. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks, everyone.
Al.
Bye-bye.
Bye.